1976 was chaos. Disco was eating the charts alive. Punk was crawling out of CBGB's basement, ready to burn it all down. And somewhere in the middle, prog rock bands were still recording 20-minute concept albums about wizards. The year gave us Hotel California and Frampton Comes Alive, sure, but it also gave us some of the weirdest, most inexplicable hits that ever climbed the Hot 100 and then vanished like they never existed. These weren't album cuts or B-sides that got forgotten. These were legitimate chart monsters that dominated radio for weeks, sold hundreds of thousands of copies, and then just disappeared from the cultural memory like someone hit the delete button. Some of these artists couldn't catch lightning twice. Some got chewed up by the label machine, and some made records so perfectly locked into that exact moment that the moment died and took the song with it. We're pulling 10 of them back out today. And if you were anywhere near a radio in 1976, at least half of these are going to hit you like a time machine the second you hear the opening bars. It's loving embrace. The other half, you might have erased from your brain as an act of self-preservation. Let's go. Number 10, Disco Duck by Rick Dees and his Cast of Idiots. Rick Dees was a DJ at WMPS in Memphis, pulling afternoon drive shifts and trying to make a name for himself, when he came up with what might be the single dumbest idea in the history of American popular music. Take disco, which was already getting mocked by half the country, add a guy doing a duck voice over the beat, and call it Disco Duck. The whole thing reportedly took him one day to write, though it took 3 months to convince anyone it was worth recording. I was on the dance floor acting straight. Estelle Axton, the Axe in Stax Records, heard it and put it out on her post-Stax label, Fratone. RSO Records picked it up for national distribution. And on October 16, 1976, Disco Duck hit number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. Let's go, Mama! I got to have Mama. It stayed in the top 10 for 10 weeks. 6 million copies for a duck. When the music stopped, I returned to my seat. Let that sink in. The Memphis radio stations wouldn't touch it. Dees worked for WMPS, and the station manager told him playing his own record was a conflict of interest, so it was banned from his own show. The other Memphis stations refused to play it because they didn't want to promote the competition's DJ, so the number 1 song in America was essentially blacklisted in the city where it was made. All the ladies were treating me right. Here's where it gets beautiful. One morning, while Disco Duck was climbing toward the top, Dees mentioned on air that his song was about to hit number 1, and his own station wouldn't let him play it. His boss heard it. 5 days before the song peaked at number 1, Rick Dees was fired. He landed at WMPS's biggest rival almost immediately and went on to host a syndicated countdown show that eventually reached something like 200 million listeners worldwide. But for one perfect week in October of 1976, He Wemgor or Rauwas was simultaneously the biggest-selling recording artist in America and unemployed because he made a novelty record about a duck. That's not a cautionary tale. That's just rock and roll. Number 9. More, More, More by Andrea True Connection. Andrea True had worked in the adult film industry before her music career, which is not something that usually makes it into the official press release. But in 1975, it's what got her to Jamaica in the first place. She was down there shooting television commercials for a real estate company when the Jamaican government slammed down a ban on taking money out of the country. Currency controls, asset freezes, the whole thing. True was stuck on the island with a pile of cash she couldn't leave with and no legal way to get it home. So she called up Greg Diamond, a producer and songwriter she knew in New York, and told him to fly down to Kingston. She'd pay for studio time, hire local musicians, and they'd cut a record. Diamond showed up with a half-finished track he'd been working on. They locked it down in Jamaica with session players. And the demo eventually landed at Buddha Records back in the States. Disco mixer Tom Moulton got his hands on it, worked it over, and Buddha released More to the clubs first. It became a dance floor favorite before they ever put it out as a mainstream single. When it hit radio in the spring of 1976, it climbed to number 4 on the Hot 100. That bass line is still one of the nastiest, most relentless grooves of the entire disco era. It just doesn't quit. True released a follow-up album and a few more singles, but nothing came close to replicating what happened with that first track. Pull it up today. It still sounds like the opening of a very good night. Number 8. Shannon by Henry Gross. Henry Gross has a rock trivia fact attached to him that people never see coming. Before he went solo, Gross was a founding member of Sha Na Na, the doo-wop revival group that somehow ended up performing at Woodstock in 1969. Gross was 18 years old when he played the main stage at Yazgur's farm, making him reportedly the youngest musician on the bill. He left the group a few years later to chase a solo career, and in 1976, he released Shannon on Lifesong Records. The song went to number 6 on the Hot 100 and went gold. The backstory is what turns it into something more than just another soft rock ballad. Gross was touring with the Beach Boys in 1975 and visited Carl Wilson at his house in Los Angeles. They got to talking about dogs, and Gross mentioned he had an Irish setter named Shannon. Wilson went quiet, told him that he too had recently had a dog named Shannon, a Samoyed, that had been hit by a car and killed. Gross went home to New York, sat down with his own dog beside him, and wrote the song in about 10 minutes. He later said, "It almost wrote itself." which is what happens when the emotion is real enough that the craft part just gets out of the way. There's something deeply affecting about a grown man writing a sincere pop ballad to honor his friend's grief over a dog. The record doesn't try to hide what it is or dress it up as something deeper. It's just a sad song about loss, delivered with real feeling. Anyone who's ever lost a pet understood exactly what it was about, even if they never knew the Carl Wilson connection. That's the kind of universal emotion that makes a hit. Number 7. Let Your Love Flow by the Bellamy Brothers. Before the Bellamy Brothers became country music royalty, more than 20 #1 singles on the country charts.
Why I'm feeling so high must be the season.
They had this one strange, shining moment as crossover pop stars. The weird thing is, they didn't even write the song that did it. Let Your Love Flow was written by Larry Williams, a roadie and guitar tech who worked for Neil Diamond's touring band.
Where you look and hide and then go stealing.
Williams had the song and pitched it to Diamond first, then to a few other artists. Everyone passed.
Now there's a reason for the warm, sweet nights, and there's a reason.
Diamond's drummer eventually played a demo of it for the Bellamy Brothers, who happened to be in Los Angeles recording sessions with members of Diamond's band at the time. David Bellamy heard it and called his brother Howard. They cut it in just a few takes with the session guys. And as David later described it, they nailed the key. The band locked into the groove immediately. And it was done. That kind of ease comes through in the finished record because it was that effortless. Let Your Love Flow hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in May of 1976 and stayed there.
Just let your love flow like a mountain.
It was massive overseas too. 5 weeks at #1 in Germany, charting high across Europe and Australia. The Bellamys moved into country music shortly after and spent the next 2 decades becoming absolute legends in that genre. So, depending on which chart you're looking at, they're either a one-hit wonder or a dynasty. The pop charts say one-hit wonder. The country charts say Hall of Fame. Both things are true at the same time. The song still sounds fresh today because it's so stripped down and simple. Acoustic guitars, a gentle shuffle, harmonies that feel like a California afternoon. No unnecessary production, no studio tricks. Just a well-crafted song doing exactly what it promises, and nothing more. Number 6. Afternoon. Delight by Starland Vocal Band. Few songs in this entire list have had a more complicated cultural afterlife than Afternoon Delight. And part of that is because nobody could decide whether it was charming or deeply annoying. Starland Vocal Band were a Washington, D.C. group built around Bill Danoff and Taffy Nivert, a married couple who had previously written Take Me Home Country Roads with John Denver and sung background vocals on the original recording, so the songwriting pedigree here is legitimate and well documented. The inspiration for Afternoon Delight came from a menu. Danoff was eating lunch at a Georgetown restaurant called Clyde's, still there today if you're ever in D.C., saw a section of specials listed under the heading Afternoon Delights, thought it sounded vaguely suggestive, and went home and wrote a song around it. He recorded it with Nivert and 2 other musicians as Starland Vocal Band. released it on John Denver's Windsong Records label in the spring of 1976. And by the 4th of July weekend, during America's bicentennial, it was sitting at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. Stayed there for 2 weeks. They won the Grammy for Best New Artist in 1977, beating out Boston, which in retrospect seems completely insane. CBS gave them a summer variety show, and a young, largely unknown comic named David Letterman appeared on it as a cast member before anyone knew who he was. Then, the moment passed. The follow-up albums didn't connect, the sound changed, and the Starland vocal band faded out. The song has been referenced, parodied, and mocked so many times since that it's become more of a punchline than a piece of music most people revisit on its own terms. But the vocal arrangement on it is actually quite sophisticated. The harmonies stack up beautifully, and Bill Danoff knew how to write a hook that burrows into your brain and refuses to leave. Whether that's enough to earn it reassessment 48 years later is a question I'll leave entirely to you. Number 5. I'd Really Love to See You Tonight by England Dan and John Ford Coley. The name England Dan and John Ford Coley sounds like something a screenwriter would invent when they need a fictional soft rock duo for a period piece. But these were real people making lovely music that has been almost completely erased from the cultural conversation. Dan Seals got the nickname England Dan as a kid because he was obsessed with the Beatles and used to affect an English accent. John Ford Coley was his high school friend from Dallas, Texas. They'd been performing together since their teenage years, released 2 albums on A&M Records without much commercial success, and were essentially out of options when their manager heard a song by a Mississippi songwriter named Parker McGee. They cut a demo, shopped it around, and got turned down by an executive at Atlantic Records. Doug Morris, the head of Atlantic's subsidiary Big Tree Records, happened to hear the song through the wall of his adjoining office, walked in, and offered them a deal on the spot.
For a while, it's been such a long time.
I'd Really Love to See You Tonight reached number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the fall of 1976, kept from the top spot by Wild Cherry's Play That Funky Music. The lyric has a specific quality to it, a kind of hesitant, almost politely restrained longing that gives it more emotional texture than the genre usually delivered. The famous line, "I'm not talking about moving in," was misheard by thousands of people as something about linen, which says something about the song's mumbled confessional charm.
How about you? I'm not sure why I call.
If you were driving anywhere in America in the summer of 1976 with the radio on, you heard this song. It was everywhere. AM radio, FM, crackling through the dash of your Cutlass or your Impala while the sun went down.
And I was thinking maybe later on we could get together.
And somehow it slipped through the cracks of collective memory in a way that still feels slightly unfair.
Reflecting the fire's glow.
Dan Seals went on to have 11 #1 country singles as a solo artist in the 1980s.
You must leave, I know you.
His older brother Jim was the Seals of Seals and Crofts, so it was a musical family.
We could go walking through Windy Park.
But this particular song, this particular sound, this particular moment, that was England Dan and John Ford Coley, and it hasn't been duplicated since. Number 4. Don't Go Breaking My Heart by Elton John and Kiki D. Let's address the obvious right up front. Elton John is not a one-hit wonder, and he's not forgotten.
Nobody knows it, nobody knows.
But this specific song deserves its own examination because it's one of the most inexplicably successful duets of the entire decade. And let's be honest about Kiki D, she gets almost no credit for it, which is a crime. Elton and his longtime collaborator Bernie Taupin wrote Don't Go Breaking My Heart under the playful pseudonyms Anne Orson and Carte Blanche. Both of them puns, because of course they were. They originally intended to record it as a duet with Dusty Springfield, but Springfield was reportedly too ill at the time. So the song went to Kiki D instead. Here's the kicker about Kiki D. She was the first British female artist signed to Tamla Motown back in 1970, working with legendary producer Frank Wilson in Detroit. The experiment didn't quite click with UK audiences at the time, but she kept going, had solo success with I've Got the Music in Me in 1974, and was a legitimate artist in her own right long before Elton came calling. She wasn't a session singer doing Elton a favor. She was a peer, but the history books tend to gloss over that part. She's almost entirely associated with this one duet, and that's an incomplete picture of her career that does her a disservice. The recording, released in June of 1976, was Elton John's first ever #1 single in the UK. He'd had enormous success on both sides of the Atlantic throughout the early 70s. Rocket Man, Crocodile Rock, Benny and the Jets. But somehow, none of those had topped the British charts. It took this duet to finally get him there, where it stayed for 6 weeks. In the United States, it went to #1 for 4 weeks. The whole thing is almost aggressively fun. It's not a moment of artistic ambition or deep emotional resonance. It's two people in a studio, clearly having a good time. In the context of Elton's catalog, which runs through Tiny Dancer and Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, this breezy summer single sometimes gets treated as a footnote. It isn't one. It's a great pop record, and Kiki D's performance on it is charming and assured in a way that deserves its own recognition separate from Elton's legacy. Number 3. A Fifth of Beethoven by Walter Murphy and the Big Apple Band. This is a song that did something so conceptually bizarre that it probably shouldn't have worked at all, and yet it went to #1. Walter Murphy was a classically trained musician who had studied at the Manhattan School of Music and worked as an arranger for Doc Severinsen's Tonight Show Orchestra. In 1976, while writing a disco song for a commercial, a producer offhandedly suggested the idea of updating a piece of classical music for the dance floor. Murphy went home, sat down at his piano, and made a demo tape containing 5 songs. 3 were ordinary pop songs nobody remembers. One was a full disco arrangement of the opening movement of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, complete with strings, horns, and a driving four-on-the-floor beat. He mailed the demo to record labels. Nobody cared about the pop songs. Private Stock Records signed him for the Beethoven track. Private Stock was that kind of label. They took weird risks. Frankie Valli's solo stuff, Blondie's debut album before they moved to Chrysalis. They had an ear for oddball hits that the majors passed on. And a fifth of Beethoven was exactly their speed. Murphy played nearly every instrument on the record himself, laid down the rhythm section, the string parts, the whole thing. His label then insisted on crediting it to Walter Murphy and the Big Apple Band on the theory that a group name would sell better than a solo artist credit. 2 days after the single was released, they discovered there was already a band called the Big Apple Band performing in New York. That band promptly changed its name to Chic. You may have heard of them. A fifth of Beethoven entered the Hot 100 at number 80 in May of 1976 and climbed to number 1 19 weeks later, where it stayed for 1 week. It sold over 1 million copies and was later licensed to RSO Records for the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack in 1977, which gave it a second enormous audience and cemented its place in the disco canon. Murphy went on to become a television composer, doing long-running work for Seth MacFarlane on Family Guy, among many other projects. What still gets me about this record is that Murphy knew exactly what he was doing. He didn't bury the original melody under production or try to disguise what it was. He let Beethoven carry the whole thing and just built a disco track around it, trusting that the melody was strong enough to survive the transformation. That instinct was exactly right. The recording holds up better than you might expect, and the conceptual audacity of it remains impressive. Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, a disco number 1. In 1976, that was just another Tuesday. Number 2, Fernando, by ABBA. ABBA are obviously not a one-hit wonder. They're one of the most successful pop acts in human history. But Fernando is one of those songs that tends to fall through the cracks of how people remember the group. And in 1976, it was absolutely massive. Released in the spring of 1976, Fernando became one of the best-selling singles of the year worldwide. In Australia alone, it spent 10 weeks at number 1 and reportedly became the best-selling single in Australian chart history up to that point. The song is built around Agnetha Feltskog's vocal performance, which is restrained in a way that makes the emotional content hit harder. She's not overselling it. And that's precisely why it works. The song is about 2 old soldiers remembering a battle they fought together as young men. It's set against the backdrop of the Mexican Revolution, though this is never explicitly stated in the lyrics. There's something melancholy running underneath the polished surface, which is characteristic of ABBA at their best.
I remember long ago
They could package real sadness inside an arrangement that felt almost celebratory. In the United States, Fernando was not the breakthrough that songs like Waterloo or Dancing Queen were, which may explain why American audiences sometimes don't place it in their mental ABBA highlight reel.
there's no regret.
But internationally, it's one of the defining pop recordings of the decade.
There's no regret.
It's the kind of song that deserves to be heard as a song, rather than as trivia, which is exactly why it's on this list. Number 1. Love Hangover by Diana Ross. Diana Ross had already been a superstar for a decade by 1976, first with the Supremes, then as a solo artist. So calling her a one-hit wonder is absurd. But Love Hangover represents a specific moment when she pivoted hard into disco, and it's a record that doesn't get talked about nearly as much as it should. The song was written by Pam Sawyer and Marilyn McLeod and produced by Hal Davis for Motown. It starts slow, almost ballad-like, and then about 2 minutes in, it explodes into a full disco groove that doesn't let up for the rest of the track.
From it, I think about it all the time.
That transition is what makes it work. It's essentially 2 songs in one, and the shift from vulnerable to euphoric is so well executed that it feels inevitable. Love Hangover hit number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in May of 1976 and stayed there for 2 weeks. It also topped the disco charts and became one of the defining records of the mid-70s club scene. Diana Ross had been famous for years, but this was her entrance into the disco era, and she nailed it on the first try. The track holds up beautifully today. The production is tight, the vocal performance is confident without being showy, and the groove is exactly what the moment required. It's one of those records that reminds you why Diana Ross was Diana Ross. She could move between genres, eras, and sounds without losing any of the command that made her a star in the first place. In the context of her catalog, Love Hangover sometimes gets overshadowed by the Supremes hits or by Ain't No Mountain High Enough. It shouldn't. It's a masterclass in how to evolve with the sound of the moment, without losing what made you matter in the first place. 1976 was a remarkable year for music, and what this list shows is how much strange, inventive, completely inexplicable stuff was happening below the headline acts. Frampton and Fleetwood Mac were getting all the press. The Eagles were selling truckloads of albums. And meanwhile, Walter Murphy was turning Beethoven into a disco record. Rick Dees was quacking into a microphone in Memphis and selling 6 million copies. And Andrea True was laundering currency restrictions into a top 5 hit. The charts were weird in the best possible way. The songs that fell through the cracks tell you as much about that era as the ones that got canonized and replayed into oblivion.
Afternoon delight.
Now, here's what I want to know from you. Which of these did you actually remember when I started talking about them? And which ones did you completely erase from your brain until just now? And more importantly, is there a 1976 one-hit wonder that deserved a spot on this list that I didn't include? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one, and the comment sections on these videos have introduced me to songs I genuinely never heard before. And here's the real question. Which of these songs do you think actually deserved to disappear? And which ones got a raw deal from history? Which ones should have died in the 70s and stayed there? Defend your choice. If you got something out of this one, the subscribe button is right there and it makes a difference for the channel. More deep dives into the stranger corners of rock and pop history are coming. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.